Blonde is getting a ton of hate, and it was a film that I thought was very well made. When I saw all the hate towards it, I was pretty surprised and I really didn't understand why. After reading some articles and seeing other people's evaluations, I really think I'm just interpreting the whole thing way differently than most. This film is starring Ana De Armas, scored by Nick Cave and Warren Ellis, and directed by Dominik, who directed The Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford. So I was super excited to see this, especially when I found out that it got an NC-17 rating. Ana De Armas mentioned she was surprised it got that rating, and after watching I am as well, because compared to other films, it was decently tame in the sex scenes, but the tone and the context of them made the outrage a little more understandable. The characters and the plot had me enveloped throughout the entire film. I was never bored and I was just fascinated with finding out what would happen next. The cinematography was amazing and the score was haunting and beautiful. The editing and changing of the aspect ratio constantly was interesting to me, and Dominik says the color changing and composition was to mimic real life photos and footage, and I think that was a neat addition. Having to do so many costumes and set variations can be very overwhelming, and I think the crew deserves some praise for doing it so well. I'm so happy I saw this before all the articles and critiques came out bashing the film, or else I wouldn't have known I was supposed to hate it. While I was watching, sure, the way the sex scenes stood out and what they were was something I knew people could be offended by and dislike, but I didn't expect anything near the amount of backlash it's getting. I guess just because they didn't happen in real life, people think it's disrespectful, but it's not a documentary and it's presented as fictional. I mean, if we're going to nitpick, nobody knows everything about her personal life anyways with complete certainty. This is just a certain type of story that wanted to be told, so I'm not sure why more people aren't taking it that way. Then moving on to the whole talking fetus thing. It was in such a Terrence Malick-esque part of the film that it didn't even stand out to me until I saw a bunch of articles about it and I had to go back and see what all the fuss was about. I mean, everything in the mainstream media is so much leaning to the pro-choice side of a debate. Is it really that unthinkable to have something even alluding in the opposite direction? If I disagree with something, it doesn't mean I want to pretend those beliefs don't exist and have it never demonstrated in a film. I love hearing both sides of any argument, and I don't think the film is even trying to make a political statement at all, but showing a fictional situation where the character in the story happens to feel a certain way about getting her fetus aborted and having to work through that with multiple pregnancies. She's trying to save the fetus in the same way she wanted to be saved from the drawer as a baby herself. I don't think it's saying that's how Marilyn herself would have felt or how every woman should feel, but in the context of the story, I think it was a gripping part of her character. Maybe it's because the film is based on a popular real-life character or just a time we live in now that people think that having a talking point in a film means it has to be making a grandiose statement about it. It's a subjective piece of art, and I don't think you have to be limited to infer things in only one way. It seems everything people point out to say why this is a horrible film are the exact same things I interpret differently to say why I love it. I think viewing movies but thinking about how other people are reacting to it and will twist it to fit their agenda is such a sad way to watch films and can ruin the experience. I have to admit I've done it a couple times myself. I've seen something I loved and then just thought about how I'm interpreting it and think about if it was more widely seen or seen by a specific audience, how they would mold the movie to what they believe, using their beliefs and outlooks to transform something I loved into something tainted. I watch films because I'm interested in them and I want to enjoy and get something out of every piece of cinema I see. I think it was a lot easier to personally enjoy films before social media came around. Before we got so many influences and reviews about something before it even comes out that can affect our opinion of the film, consciously or not. Before watching Blonde, I didn't adore Marilyn Monroe or even find her too interesting, so maybe that's why a fictionalized account of her life doesn't offend me. I didn't think it made her look bad or exploit her. If anything, it made me actually find her interesting and feel bad for her, even though everything that happens in the movie might not be true. I don't think showing misogyny in a film by any means makes the film misogynistic in itself. If anything, I would have assumed feminists and the like would have been saying how this film exposes the patriarchy in Hollywood, how it emotionally and physically hurt women throughout the years, or how the overprotective husband was so controlling of Marilyn and her body and beat her, or showing so many instances of the male gaze and how it's so hard for women to be themselves in society. I thought many people would sympathize with that, but from what I see, they are just saying that's how Dominik was shooting Ana De Armas. I just don't interpret it that way. It's admittedly a work of fiction, so I don't really see how it's different from Tarantino rewriting events of World War II in Inglorious Basterds, or changing history in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, other than that Blonde isn't a more depressing and dreary story, and isn't more of a fairy tale reimagining. Maybe it's because it doesn't show her happier or stronger more often that people think that is so disrespectful to Marilyn and to people that have gone through those type of experiences. I don't think you have to write characters better than everyone else for them to be relatable or empowering. So for Blonde being something completely fictional and is intentionally coming across as such, I don't see why people can't make that distinction that it's just a story that wanted to be told, real or not. For others that hated it, maybe it was just so different from what they thought the film was going to be, but I don't think they marketed it in a way that would make you think it was going to be truthful or cheerful. And from the NC-17 rating, I mean, if you are squeamish to that type of content, maybe go on IMDb and look at the parental guidelines first. The pacing of the film made me sympathize with the character as well. Going relationship to relationship without a big conclusion to the previous one made me feel the way I imagined the character to feel. Like her life was spiraling away from her and her stardom was becoming something she didn't want. How all the abuse she is getting throughout her life is so overwhelming for her and showing the effects of it. I just really dig the idea of making a fictional story about something or someone play out differently in real life. I wonder what people would think is more offensive. Blonde, a film about a beloved star that makes basically every aspect of her life horrible throughout and depressing, or a fictionalized retelling of a young Adolf Hitler and how he became a successful painter and rises to the top of the art industry in Europe. Okay, yeah, of course people would say that would be in poor taste, but I can't help but be intrigued by the concept. And I wouldn't think a positive retelling of that story would be disrespectful to the victims of what he did or washing away his evil, if it was done in a similar way as Blonde, where they say it's completely fictional and just a story. I really don't think it's disrespectful in any way to make content about someone that has been dead for so long. And for their family members, it would be nice if they loved the movie too, but it's completely understandable if they don't want to watch it. Her life ended early, and it makes sense that they don't want to watch something that reminds them of that. I don't think that means a more somber outlook should be loathed so much, or that it never should have been made though. I don't think anyone now hates Marilyn Monroe because of this film or thinks poorly of her. In fact, I would say it's the exact opposite, so I don't think there's any long-lasting damage to her or her legacy. If anything, I bet people now want to view her movies more than ever and look for a happier view of her life. Regardless, I thought Anna did a spectacular job as Marilyn. The big nitpick I see about her casting is the accent she has isn't good. In a Variety interview, she talks about how much she studied Marilyn's mannerisms, voice, and accents to do the good job, and explains how, over time and depending on the setting and medium, Marilyn's accent would change slightly, so Anna's not being consistent throughout the film doesn't seem like a problem to me. She also talks about how Andrew Dominik never cut between takes and had the crew dressed to the time period, so if she was talking behind the scenes to someone, they could use footage of it for the movie, and they did. And I just think that's such a unique idea and is such a small nugget of the passion everyone involved for this film had. People are saying that it makes her come across as a victim when she was so much more than that, but I don't think it makes her look like a victim in a "oh someone please help me" way, or "she did this to herself" type of way, but showing a victim of abuse and existence in the way we all are in this life. I don't understand why so many reviewers are also saying how Andrew Dominik so clearly has contempt for Marilyn and has no love for her. Do you know how much time and effort it takes to get a film made? In an interview by Cinexpress, Dominik reveals how he's been trying to get this movie made for over 10 years, and about getting his heart broken over and over before he finally got it made. So I think the perseverance is motivating and shows his intrigue with the character. I think I really just took this film in a completely different way than most people, and I really do love it. Nobody can truly know what went on behind the scenes or what people of the past thought. We can't even truly know what our loved ones think now, so in a piece of art that is fictional and takes liberties with events and beliefs doesn't seem offensive to me or wrong. I think Ana De Armas should no doubt be in consideration for an Oscar, as well as the director, the cinematographer, editor, costume designer, and the composer, but I doubt any of that will happen due to the insane amount of backlash. I just didn't see any other positive reviews or outlooks on the film, so perhaps my perspective is one that others can relate to. I'd say take the time to watch this film for what it is and go in with an open mind.